A new food pyramid was released last week, and within hours, a reaction followed a very familiar pattern.
What's up and welcome to Sam Miller Science, where you're joining me just over a decade into my personal journey of working to bridge the gap between metabolism, macros, muscle, and medicine, all while helping coaches scale the impact that they desire and deserve. If you are here, thank you so much for listening and for trusting me to help you elevate your coaching game or to lead you in your transformation to realize your true potential. In either case, each week I'll be sharing my methods, models, and message to serve as leverage for your specific goals. Without further ado, let's get on to today's show.
Strong opinions from people online, quick conclusions in the comment section, and a lot of certainty from people who don't actually spend their days working with real humans on their nutrition. So let me be clear about what this conversation in today's episode is and what it's not. This podcast is not a critique of the food pyramid itself or a hit piece, and it's not an argument about whether one visual is better than another. This commentary is specifically a nutrition news announcement and a clear opportunity for our industry to be better, not only in terms of our advice for clients, but even how we disseminate public information. Because national nutrition guidelines are not a prescription. They are population level guidance. They're meant to start the conversations around nutrition, not end them. And the real mistake isn't just the pyramid itself, it's how we interpret it and teach people, react to it, and try to apply it universally to millions of humans. So let's talk about how we got here in the first place. We had the food pyramid, we've had my plate, and now the new food pyramid in 2026. So if you zoom out, this isn't new. The original food pyramid from the 1990s was hierarchical, carb heavy at best, misguided at worst. And from 1992 until 2011, it reflected food marketing and policy priorities of that era. Then came my plate during the Obama administration. That shift was intentional. Less hierarchy, little more balance, slightly simpler visual of a plate that people could actually understand on a meal-to-meal basis. In theory, it was progress, but here's the part that almost never gets discussed, and I certainly didn't see it online over the last week. The National Health and Examination Survey data has repeatedly shown minimal adoption and adherence to any of these national frameworks. So when we use the National Health and Nutrition Examination surveys, multiple analyses have shown that fewer than 1 in 3 U.S. adults meets even the basic alignment with the federal dietary guidance patterns. This includes my plate and these recommendations that have come out over the last 20 years. The National Health and Examination Survey data is voluntary, it's self-reported, and it's dietary recall, which already biases upwards towards healthier behavior, and adherence often means partial compliance, not perfect execution. And so when it's broken down by income, education, and metabolic health, alignment with these policies drops even further. So it's not just the old pyramid, and it's not just my plate, it's these government guidelines in general. So when industry professionals argue about whether the 2026 pyramid is a meaningful upgrade over my plate, yeah, there are definitely some improvements there, but they're often debating refinements to a system that most people never truly followed. And that matters because effectiveness isn't about design elegance or our graphic capabilities, because it's not a graphic problem. This is an execution, behavior, and individualization problem, which needs to be tackled separately from the government population level advice. And behavior change doesn't happen just because a president changed or a government graphic improved. Now, the real issue with the release goes beyond the food. The biggest issue wasn't just about what foods were included or excluded. It was the health and fitness industry's reaction to the food pyramid was worse than the food pyramid. Dietitians firing off that it wasn't that big of an improvement from my plate and then calling people out who never mentioned my plate in the first place. Coaches dissecting the semantics, social media turning nuance into teams and sides and arguments. Meanwhile, the average person is still skipping meals, under eating protein, confused about what healthy actually means, and trying the latest social media trends only to end up back where they were when they started. So the conversation drifts away from reality. The food pyramid didn't fail solely just because of the foods that were in it. Now, we could make some improvements to the foods 100%, but it failed because behavior change does not come just from guidelines alone. It comes from context, education, individualized and personalized application. So a pyramid can tell you what category of food belongs to, but it doesn't necessarily explain your personal symptoms like energy crashes in the afternoon, or why your labs look the way that they do, or why your adherence keeps breaking down to your given program. That's not necessarily a flaw in the pyramid. That's the limit of population level guidance. And we simply need to understand that's what you're getting when you're looking at these graphics. And we need to understand that nutrition shouldn't be political. Every time these guidelines change, the same thing happens. It becomes a political conversation, different administration, different outrage, different narratives layered onto food choices. But here's the reality. Your metabolic health does not care about political party lines, and insulin sensitivity isn't ideological, and your thyroid physiology doesn't shift with election cycles, assuming you're taking personal responsibility for your health. Whether it's the old pyramid, my plate, or the 2026 version, outcomes improve when nutrition is customized based on your health history, your activity demands, your family risk factors, your personal lab testing, and your lived symptoms and behaviors over time. None of that requires waiting for federal approval or any type of special health initiative. The danger isn't that the guidelines exist. The danger is outsourcing your personal judgment instead of developing it. So if this were actually the nutrition Bible and we had to modify this food pyramid and people had to live by these laws on a daily basis, if it was nutritional law, it would fall apart quickly because these guidelines have to be vague. It doesn't necessarily distinguish between sedentary individuals and highly active ones, insulin resistant and insulin sensitive populations versus autoimmune conditions or people with gut issues. It doesn't address protein adequacy, food timing, digestive tolerance, micronutrient density. Now you get there a little bit by proxy with the foods that are recommended. And it doesn't talk about how stress and sleep interact with dietary intake, and it can't. And that's not a design failure, so we don't need to harp on that. That's the reality of population level guidance. Simplicity raises awareness, and then individualization is what drives the outcomes. So the pyramid tells you what lane a food lives in. Should I eat more of this food or less of this food? But coaching determines how much, how often, when to eat it, and for how long, or whether it works at all. Because that's where real progress happens, is in these coaching conversations and the individualization of nutrition. So if the pyramid were law, what I'd want to see, if we were going to treat this as a true national and nutritional baseline, a few things would matter. First, we've obviously moved towards this protein forward emphasis, which is great. I like kind of a protein forward Mediterranean style dietary pattern, not just as a diet, but as a framework. So we're emphasizing single ingredient whole foods, antioxidant polyphenol intake, lean meats, fish, and quality protein. There's olive oil in the new food pyramid, but monounsaturated fats in general, plus some omega-3s are going to be crucial, fruits and vegetables. Second thing is we need to have an explicit discussion around things like fat quality and overall food quality, especially omega-6 to omega-3 balance. Some of the research around monounsaturated to saturated and polyunsaturated fats, I have past podcast episodes on that. Most people aren't calorie deficient. They're micronutrient deficient, could benefit from some more amino acids and protein intake and improving their fatty acid intake. Because when these dietary factors are skewed, it quietly influences inflammation, lipid profiles, insulin signaling, and long-term metabolic health. We also need an explicit acknowledgement that adjustments are expected. Nutrition is iterative. It's a journey. Context matters. That deviation for you personally is not failure. And that single clarification would eliminate a huge amount of personal guilt, confusion, or all or nothing thinking when it comes to nutrition. So remember, the food pyramid isn't the enemy. It's just a starting point, and overreaction to it is the distraction. Real progress in nutrition doesn't come from new visuals or shiny graphics. It comes from better filters and personalized application to yourself and your life, especially from coaches who understand the body systems, physiology, and how we respond to nutritional stimulus. We need to individualize client programs without dogmatic approaches, translate that complexity into something people can actually live with on a daily basis. National guidelines only start the conversation. Coaching is what tailors it on a personal level. And in a health system that's already stretched super thin, that role matters more than ever. If this episode resonated with you, please share the show and tag me. I'm at Sam Miller Science on just about every major platform. You can also leave a 5-star rating and review on the audio feed, which goes a tremendously long way in supporting the show. If you've been enjoying our new video format, make sure you subscribe to never miss a new episode on YouTube, or we've got those videos on Spotify as well. If you're new here, you can catch hundreds of hours of past nutrition content, fitness, lifestyle, health optimization, hormones, and metabolism content on this same channel. I appreciate you tuning in to today's episode, and I will talk to you in the next show.
Thank you for stopping by and for tuning into today's episode. It still amazes me that individuals like yourself from around the world take time out of your day to listen and learn from what I have to say. I appreciate you, and I'm so grateful that you choose to spend time on this platform. If you think that someone else would benefit from the message or the methods that I've shared in this podcast episode, please leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. You can also screenshot this episode and tag me at Sam Miller Science on your Instagram stories. My goal is that we can continue the ripple effect of coaching and continue to pay it forward so that this information ends up in the hands of those who are trying to make a positive difference in the world. Thank you so much again for joining me, and I'll talk to you guys in the next episode.
This show is designed to help you translate complex nutrition, fitness, and physiology concepts into leverage for your clients' goals or your own personal goals. This podcast is for online education, meaning this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. And no doctor-patient or coach-client relationship is formed through listening to this episode. The use of information in this podcast and the show notes or the reliance on the information provided is done at the listener's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and is for educational purposes only. Always consult your physician before beginning any exercise program, and users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such condition. By accessing this podcast and any other episode, the listener acknowledges that the entire contents and design of this podcast are the property of Oracle Athletic Science and should not be used or retransmitted without permission of Oracle Athletic Science. This is protected under U.S. and international copyright and trademark laws. Except as where otherwise provided herein, users of this podcast may save and use the information contained in this podcast only for personal or other non-commercial educational purposes. No other use, including without limitation, reproduction, retransmission, or editing of this podcast may be made without prior written permission of Oracle Athletic Science and Sam Miller, which may be requested through the contact information in the show notes. By accessing this podcast, the listener acknowledges that Oracle Athletic Science makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast, and coaches and listeners understand that this information may change over time with different research and anecdotal practices in the field. It is the listener's responsibility to stay up to date on this information. As always, this show is designed to help you, and I appreciate you listening to every episode. Simply understand it's for general informational and educational purposes, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.